Number 10, the chronic over-apologizer. You know them instantly. They say sorry when someone else bumps into them. They say sorry for taking a second too long to answer a question. They apologize for things that are not remotely their fault. This isn't politeness. It's the clearest verbal sign of a person who feels their very existence is an inconvenience. For the over-apologizer, their words has ceased to be an admission of wrongdoing. It has become a reflex and a desperate attempt to soften their presence in the world. This habit is formed in environments where they were made to feel like a burden. Their brain has learned that apologizing constantly is the only way to de escalate potential conflict and be granted permission to take up space. They aren't just apologizing for an action, they are apologizing for who they are. Number 9, the relatability buffer. You're sharing a personal struggle and a friend interrupts with, I don't know if this is the same, but before sharing their own story, we see it as a polite way to connect. But that introductory phrase is a buffer, and it's a defense mechanism born from a fear of invalidating your experience or being seen as a narcissist. This phrase is a desperate plea for permission to be relatable. The person is so worried about hijacking the conversation or making it about themselves that they have to cushion their contribution. It comes from a deep-seated fear that their own experiences aren't valid or important enough to stand on their own. They need to signal extreme deference to your feelings before they dare to share their own. Number 8, the approval seeker. You've just listened to a colleague explain a complex topic. They finish and immediately ask, does that make sense? We take it as a simple check for understanding, but often it's a subconscious offloading of anxiety. This is the language of someone who desperately craves validation and doubts their own clarity. This question subtly shifts the responsibility. Instead of asking, did I explain that clearly? Which puts the focus on them, they phrasing of, does that make sense? Puts the burden of understanding on the listener. It's a sign of a brain riddled with self-doubt, terrified of being seen as foolish or incoherent. They aren't just checking your comprehension, they are seeking validation and approval. Number 7, the possibility hedger. Have you ever heard someone offer advice and it just feels like there is no backbone or weight behind it? They might say, I was just thinking, or maybe you could, instead of a direct, let's do this, or I have an idea, they frame every contribution as a tentative, fleeting thought. This isn't them being collaborative. It's a subconscious fear of ownership and rejection. By using soft, non-committal language, they can introduce an idea into the world without emotionally attaching themselves to it. If the idea is rejected, it doesn't feel like a personal blow. It was just a random passing thought. This is a defense mechanism for a brain that equates the rejection of an idea with the rejection of the self. It's how they participate without ever putting their self-esteem on the line. Number 6, the compulsive justifier. You ask someone for a favor, but instead of a simple I can't, you get a 5-minute explanation detailing every reason why it's impossible. This isn't them being thorough. It's the mark of someone who feels the need to provide some justification or reasoning. Not only is this a defensive mechanism, but they are also terrified of disappointing you. This person has learned that their boundaries are only valid if they come with an airtight, bulletproof excuse. A simple no feels like a personal rejection of you, so their brain scrambles to build excuses, offering up evidence to prove they aren't a bad or selfish person. It comes from a past where their refusal to do something was met with guilt tripping or anger, teaching them that their own limits are an opening for negotiation. Number 5, the gratitude deflector. You give a friend a genuine compliment, and instead of thank you, they respond with, oh, this old thing? I got it on sale. They can't just accept the praise. We see it as humility, but this inability to accept compliments is often a symptom of a deeply seated feeling of unworthiness. And for someone who deflects gratitude, accepting a compliment feels like accepting a lie. Their internal self image is so low that the positive feedback creates intense cognitive dissonance. Their brain can't compute it. And to resolve this discomfort, they have to negate the compliment. Number 4, the question inflector. Ever talk to someone who makes statements sound like questions? They'll say, I think we should go to this restaurant. You might think it's just a verbal quirk, but it's a clear signal of a deep seated fear of being assertive. They aren't making a statement, they're asking for permission for it to exist. This habit strips all the certainty from their own words. It turns a declaration into a plea for validation. The subtle hidden messages that is asking, is that okay? Do you agree? It's the sound of a brain that has learned that being direct or decisive is dangerous and leads to conflict or disapproval. So it softens every conviction into a question to avoid ever sounding too sure of itself. Number 3, the self-deprecator. You know that person who's always the target of their own jokes? They mess up slightly and say, God, I'm such an idiot. You probably laugh along, thinking they have a great sense of humor and don't take themselves too seriously. But this isn't humor, it's a desperate attempt to control the narrative. This is the strategy of someone terrified of being judged. For the self-deprecator, their logic is simple. If I criticize myself first, your criticism can't hurt me. And by pointing out their own flaws, they beat everyone else to the punch, disarming the potential sting of external critique. This behavior is learned in environments where love and acceptance felt conditional, and the fastest way to get ahead of the inevitable criticism was to serve it up yourself. Number 2, the minimizer. Ever had a friend say, it's not a big deal, but, or this is probably a stupid question, but they're bringing up something that is clearly important to them, yet they dismiss its value in the same breath. This isn't just them being considerate. It's a heartbreaking sign of someone who has learned their needs don't matter. This is a coping mechanism for a deep-seated fear of being seen as too much. They have been conditioned to believe that their needs, wants, and feelings are an inconvenience and of less importance to others. So they present their problems in a way of making themselves smaller to be more acceptable. Number 1, the disqualifier. You're in a meeting and a colleague says, I'm no expert, but before sharing a brilliant idea, you might see this as humility or a sign of them being careful. But this isn't just modesty, it's a verbal shield, a strategic preemptive defense against judgment. This is the language of someone who is terrified of having their intelligence challenged. This phrase is a subconscious strategy to lower the stakes. By disqualifying and undermining their own expertise from the start, they're telling you not to judge this harshly because they've already admitted it might be wrong. It often comes from a past where their ideas were shot down or ridiculed. So their brain now builds this verbal escape into every contribution, protecting their fragile self-worth, a potential attack that feels both personal and inevitable. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe to see more.